book chat. My name is Laura Cavers, and we're about. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to book chat. This month, we have Dr. Bryan Luizzi, Superintendent of New Canaan Schools, and we're so happy to have him here. The book chat has turned into not only a book discussion that librarians bring to our patrons, but we have been asking local people to come in, business leaders, as well as school leaders, as well as government leaders, and they've been coming in over the last 2 years that book chat has been here, and today we have Bryan. So we will begin. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're very busy.
A little. Not as busy as the president, but as superintendent.
But I think you're pretty busy.
Thank you for the invitation. You know, I've always been so impressed by the guests you have at the library and the speakers that come in. And when you had called, I had to double check to make sure.
Yes.
Because it was a bit humbling and exciting.
Well,
thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. I see your stack of books. So let me first ask you some questions.
Sure.
What has been the journey to become superintendent at New Canaan?
Sure. And you said we only have 6 hours, right?
Yeah, that's right. 6 hours, right, guys?
I'm just kidding. It's been a wonderful journey that's gotten me to the place that I am now. And I've been the superintendent. This is my 8th year here in New Canaan. I started my career as an English teacher at Newtown High School. And I went into English and became an English teacher because I've always loved reading. It's been a big part of my life. And I know we'll talk about that more specifically in a little bit. And I like the thinking and the discussion and dialogue that grows from that. So I started as an English teacher. I moved into technology for a little bit. I became a dean of students, assistant principal at a middle and high school, principal at the high school in Brookfield for a little while. And then I had a phone call from someone in New Canaan to see if I'd be interested in becoming in pursuing the principalship of New Canaan High School. And not knowing much about New Canaan, I thought to myself, you know, I am a principal now, and I like where I am, and was a little hesitant. And then I had a call from David Abbey, who asked to meet with me for just a few minutes to talk. David was the superintendent at the time. David and I met and spoke for 3 hours together about education, about children, about community, about why we do what we do. And it was just a wonderful conversation. And after that, I was excited, and I threw my hat in the ring to become the high school principal here. And I did that back in 2011, became the principal. And then a couple of years later, I had a meeting scheduled with our then superintendent, Mary Kolick, to ask her about other opportunities in the district to continue to grow. And she came in that meeting, and before I could get a word out, told me she was retiring, and asked me if I'd be interested in talking to the board about becoming a superintendent. And I did, and here we are, 8 years later. I did warn you, I can talk for a long time. But when I speak quite a bit to aspiring administrators and people want to become principals, assistants, even superintendents, and I tell them truthfully on my path, I really just worked as hard as I could to be as good as I could be at whatever it was I was doing. I never planned out to be a superintendent or a high school principal or any of the above. I just really tried to be as good as I could be and fully immerse myself in whatever I was doing. And as a result, I've always loved it. I've always really enjoyed and had wonderful experiences with leading teachers in buildings, leading district-wide, doing work. I loved the conversations I had with my kids as an English teacher. I was so fortunate to be able to teach Honors English 2 to sophomores. And then another class that I was able to develop and to continue to evolve, which was called Modernism and Mythology, and was an honor seniors course. And I was the only one who taught it. And there was enough freedom there to really explore ideas and have some fun. So that's what sort of brought me to where I am as superintendent. Of course, throughout, and I was always in school. I was a perpetual student. I had my undergraduate from Clemson, a degree from WestConn, a degree from Sacred Heart, and then my terminal degree at Teachers College, Columbia University, as a doctorate in education, organizational leadership. And so I just always engage with my own learning. And then the year that I graduated, much to my wife's chagrin, I began teaching at the university. Right? So I've always been in the classroom and trying to be involved because I find it nourishing and inspiring to be sort of working with people, whether they're adults or kids, and to be sort of generating new understandings together.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to take yourself to your teenage level, would you be surprised at you being a superintendent?
I think anyone who knew me in my teenage level would be. Just kidding. Believe it or not, when I was in middle school, and people just reminded me of this not too long ago, some of my friends, I used to get in trouble a little bit in middle school, in 7th grade in particular. Yeah. And I would get trouble in English, in English class for reading, because I didn't really want to read what they were reading. I wanted to read my Lord of the Rings series. So I was under my desk doing this, and I'd be reading, and I'd be getting, and then I'd hide the book so nobody could see what I was doing. And the teacher just thought I wasn't engaged, but people around me knew what I was doing. And yeah, it just, I've always loved to read and to learn. I didn't always love to read and to learn the way that my teachers wanted me to. And I think that understanding has really helped me as a teacher, as an educational leader, and others, that, you know, we don't all learn the same way or at the same time or on the same path. So I was actually very fortunate in the very beginning of my career. I filled in at an alternative school for a teacher who had gone out for about half a year. And it was an outward bound themed experiential education alternative program with 16 kids. And we had quite a bit of freedom, and we would go hiking or camping or rock climbing, canoeing, rafting, and we'd anchor all of what we were doing in learning in the disciplines. Right? So we'd be camping together, sitting around the fire and reading poetry together. We'd be, you know, sort of bringing the education to the world for them, so that learning wasn't just something you did in the classroom, but it was something they experienced everywhere.
Yes.
And one of the highlights of that was one of the students, Ray, a couple of years later, called me up. He had gone to flight school. He had become a pilot. I met him at Danbury Airport, and we flew together down the Hudson. We went around the Statue of Liberty. We came back up the Hudson and spent the day together. And it just, these kids are so talented. They just, the average just may not work for them. So we always, as teachers and educators, want to always think about how do we engage students where they are to help to bring them forward. And it's not a one size fits all.
That's wow. So
I said I can talk a lot. I love what we do.
So given all the busyness, especially all the flying down the Hudson River. And
well, that was years ago.
I know, you're a busy guy. So how much pleasure reading do you get to do now that you're so busy?
Not nearly as much as I'd like, but believe it or not, I'm a little less busy in my private life because both of my daughters are away at school. So I have a freshman and a junior daughter in college, one in Syracuse, one at Wake Forest. So the weekends magically freed up a bit, which is very nice. So I use my weekends. I try to guard some time there pretty carefully so that I can do my pleasure reading. But truly what I find myself doing is listening quite a bit in the car. So I'll listen to books on tape. I alternate. I'll go between radio sometimes, and then music, and then podcasts, and then a couple of books. And you know, I subscribe to an Audible subscription where I get a credit a month. And when they tell me my credits are full, I shift back over to books on tape.
Yeah.
And I've had some wonderful experiences doing that. You know, to listen to some series in the car that I know I'd really struggled to have the time to read at home has really been a benefit, and I love doing that. So I make sure that I read every day. There's always a book by the bed, or listen for sure. But really, I try to read every night. I really do. We were talking before about these series on Netflix and everything, and how they're perpetual. There's no real end to these stories. And I like a good story, and I like a good conclusion, and I like a good, being able to move on. So I do always have books by the bedside.
There is certainly the pandemic was a big issue that many people really gravitated toward the digital,
right?
Because they couldn't get into the libraries, and the Audible, the ebooks, and the e-audiobooks skyrocketed to the point that they're very expensive to own and to have, but my goodness, that's really been such an amazing surprise to all of us. Still, a lot of people say that they can't wait to come in and get the actual book. They love holding a book, but the Audible has really just been amazing.
And just for building up that, little. I've also noticed the quality of podcasts has really increased
Yes.
exponentially. There's some wonderful podcasts out there by some really good deep thinkers like Malcolm Gladwell and Adam Grant and some other guys. So he used the medium to have first person dialogue. So instead of having the interview and the quotes in the book, he actually had the person who said it on the audiobook. Really well done. So it's fun to watch how people are becoming more and more creative with stories and information.
At the end, we'll be able to unmute and ask the doctor, the professor,
Bryan.
Bryan, some questions. So what do you think is the great benefit? And we talked about this earlier, the great benefit of reading a book.
Wow.
Opposed to listening to a book, or even opposed to the television that's on TV. Which do you choose, and which is, we're in competition with a lot of really good.
We are, and a lot of things that are very good at capturing our attention and keeping it. I think it's a Mark Twain quote that's, I think he said, the person who does not read has no advantage over the person who cannot read. Right? So I think when we think about what's the value of reading in a world full of noise, sitting, immersing yourself in a book, really, I think is healthy for the mind, the body, the soul, all of it. When I do take my time on the weekends and do some reading, I always put the distractions away, the phone, I take my Apple Watch off, I do all of those things. And it's almost like a little detox each week, right? To just be able to focus on one thing. And one of the books that I brought to talk about a little bit is Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I read that, and it really changed my understanding of the world in different ways. I used to teach it to my sophomores and my seniors in Newtown. And really it talks about the human story, how as human beings from the beginning of time, if we look at the stories, the experiences that people have, there are certain commonalities to those stories. And that's whether it's that call to adventure, or finding a mentor, or striking out on your own and facing your fears, all of those things, it applies so well to all of what we do. I mean, in the different roles that I've had, whether superintendent, principal, others, I've had a call to adventure. I've found a mentor. I've had to do things on my own. I've really, you can apply it. Same with getting married, having children, doing all of the things that we do. And I think that story is so important. I think when we read books, fiction especially around that, it's sort of we resonate with the story of the world and the universe, and Carl Jung's idea of this universal subconsciousness, not to get too heady, but I really feel that it helps us personally. I think it helps us societally, because we do develop empathy and understanding as we read through stories of people going through their different struggles and how they've acted and reacted, how they treat one another, all of that. I think that it really helps to develop empathy and understanding. And it's just nothing like a great book.
As a reader advisor here at the library, a lot of times people ask me, oh, maybe I'll, listen to it on audio, and sometimes they'll have actors, and I've enjoyed a lot of the performances, so to speak, that are on audio. But I do say to people, I say, when you pick up a book, it is your relationship with that book. It is a private experience. And so whatever is your emotion, it's your true emotion. If you're listening to sometimes things on audio, the voice actor may push you into an emotion, or if you're watching something on television, the director is pulling you into a story that is very much, I wouldn't say in his view, you do come away with your own interpretation, but a book is just you and the words. And I feel that is your own experience and your own time to really reflect on being upset about something, and no one is around you to be, saying, don't get upset, or that's ridiculous, or something. No, if you're upset, you can be, or if you're so happy, if something really makes you feel very good, or a new idea, you're like, oh, that's great. It's your own experience, and it's so much stronger. I think
that's absolutely right. I do. I think one is receptive and one is generative, right? And that whether it's watching a screen or listening to the audiobook, I think you're absolutely right. And the generative experience of reading the words on the page and having this your consciousness open up in a way that takes you and somewhere and brings emotions to you that you wouldn't otherwise feel is so powerful. And I do listen to books on tape in my commute, but I also have to pay attention to the road. I'm also making sure I'm going the right way. And there's lots of things going on that whether I'm conscious of them or not, they're still there, right? And they're still pulling me away ever so slightly from the story. And it's funny you say the emotion you feel. I remember years ago reading Game of Thrones. And I got to a point, if you're familiar with the book of what's called the Red Wedding, I had to put the book down and I had to take a walk, and I was gone for hours because I could not believe what had just happened in the story, to the characters and all. It's a very intense series, and it's not something I necessarily recommend to a general audience, but those are the emotions that can be elicited. And if you're just watching it on a screen, it's a whole different feeling. So I think you said it very well.
Well, I see your books there, but I wanted to ask one more question before you get into the books you've brought to talk about. What are some of the big issues in education today? Not about COVID. Let's not talk about COVID because that is, yes, that has been very much a big issue. But what are the big issues of education today? Yeah.
It's a great question. And I'm going to break the rules just a little. I do have to say it is a wonderful day in the Canaan Public Schools today and it is a COVID related thing. But yesterday we had our booster clinic for all our teachers, and we had over 500 sign up and come through, our faculty and staff. And this afternoon and right into tonight, we have our clinic for our little guys, 5 to 11 years old. And we have over 1,000 signups. So it's I continue to believe the path out of the pandemic is through the vaccinations, and I'm excited by that response. And so we had a few folks out today getting the booster yesterday, but on balance,
I hear you got your booster yesterday.
I did, but I'm
hanging strong there.
Hanging strong. But it's energizing to talk about books and reading. So this is the best part of my day. But the question about what's going on in education. It's a wonderful question. And there are quite a few ongoing challenges that we have, right? I believe, and I say this as frequently as people let me, that the work we do in schools is the most important work on the planet. I'm going to use the word again. We are working with our students, our staff, to generatively co-create the future. We are working with kids to help them to develop the skills, the experiences, the knowledge, the mindsets that they'll need in order to step out into a world that, let's face it, is challenging and grows continually more and more challenging. I mentioned that I have my 2 daughters, watching their arc of education, and now as they're off in school. So I think that first and foremost, one of our real challenges is communicating to everyone how important our work is. Because it's not just somewhere kids go during the day so parents can go to work. We are working with kids, giving them opportunities to explore and to actualize a potential that they may not even know that they have, to find things that they love, find their passion, give them opportunities, things called passion projects with kids and other things, and to really find ways for every single one of our students to find success. We're doing something here in the United States that's never been done in the history of the world. In our public education system, believing to the core that we can educate every single child to a high level. Rest of the world, they've got tracks and limits and other things. We don't do that in the United States. We believe every child can and will learn well if we approach them with care, creativity, and open mind, and really engage dignity and respect. Right. So again, I'm speaking very, very generally, but I think that the reason I keep saying it is because that's our why as a school system. Why do I do what I do? Why do we do the work that we do here in New Canaan? Why do we work so hard, right? And it's because we're doing the most important work on the planet. Now, we have our challenges. Right? So in many parts of the country and the state, there are some inequities in funding and some challenges there. And the state is looking at a way to try to do a little bit more equalization. And I'm on the board of directors for the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. So we've been looking at this problem for a little while and have a proposal that's going forward to the legislature, a blueprint for a long-term kind of solution to some of those issues. We are seeing that our kids, similar to what we're talking about with reading and all, the distractions are very difficult. You know, the influence of social media, the influence of always having access to a whole alternate world,
Right.
you know, in your pocket. And we all see it, right? If my daughters have 90 seconds to kill, they're not looking around and enjoying where they are. They're looking down and going somewhere else, right? So we do quite a bit with sort of the health and wellness, mindfulness with our staff, because we're all just as guilty, right? When I have it there, I'm always thinking about the next thing. Really working on helping people to be present in what we're doing. We've taken some steps. I mean, there are some technical solutions to that, like at the high school, on the back of the doors in the classrooms, we have shoe organizers where they're all numbered. So students walk in, they put their phone in there, and it's out of sight, out of mind a little bit. And we do some other things at different levels. So we're trying to take some steps, but ultimately our kids live in a world that's immersed with all of this. And we need to teach them the skills and the mindsets to succeed in that world. Because just like we were talking before about Netflix series and all of those, I mean, we know that there are highly skilled, highly compensated, very, very well-educated people who work every day to try to get our kids and all of us to look at our phones. That's their job. That's what they do. And they're very, very good at it. And so how can we work with our kids and in our schools to help our kids to become discerning consumers of the technology and also responsible producers? Because they're out there. You know, this is a flat world now when they're able to post and publish. So, you know, as the pandemic did highlight some issues around inequality, around communication, access, other things. And in education across the country, we're going to continue looking at those things at a national and a statewide level, but right down into the classroom. We really need to continue thinking about the influence of other, especially tech, on our kids and on their thinking, because that, you know, I'm sure you're well aware of the myth of multitasking, and we're all very aware of it, except our kids just don't believe it. You know, but then we watch them do
This
it.
is the way it always is.
Exactly. And no, your mind just isn't built that way. And again, just to loop it back, I think that's what makes reading so important, right? So vital for all of us, because when you are truly immersed in reading, you know, those distractions melt away. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of your favorite books.
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay. So just to let people know, the reason I keep having to turn, people are being admitted in. So I've been clicking a computer to let everyone in. I'm sorry if it's distracting. So now Bryan is going to just show you books and talk about the books most important to him.
So when Laura and when we spoke, you asked if I actually have copies of the books to bring or what have you. And I think I responded by saying I'm a bibliophile, right? So I don't think I've ever lost a book, right? Or not kept one, other than to share with people. And then I'm that person who calls a year later to say, do you still have that book?
Oh, so you're a librarian too.
I am.
A
little bit. So my problem wasn't finding the books to bring. My problem was winnowing it down to a reasonable number. So I have a couple that I'm so happy to share. And I just do want to start with, well, I'll start with a little one that was very important for me. And the framework I used in sort of winnowing down the list was what books have helped me to shift my paradigm and understanding, whether it's myself or the world or others, and you know, how things that have kind of left an impact. And then I thought about, and what have I shared with other people? Because I'm very fortunate to be in a field and surrounded by colleagues who also love to read and to learn and to talk. And you know, I was thinking about, I'm probably in 5 different groups that some read articles, some read books together. Our administrative team, every summer, I give them a book and we read it, and then we use that for our conversations as we go through the year. So it's really, again, it's for all the reasons we've been talking about. So I mentioned in the arc of my career that I was the principal of Brookfield High School for a little while. So I was 35 years old. I was coming into a school where I'd been the assistant for 2 years, but I was pretty young and inexperienced to be blunt. You know, 35 and running a high school. But I loved it, and I just graduated that year, and everything went well. But I really wanted to start in a positive way, and so I did some reading, learned some things, and looked at Gallup, had some great things, and I picked a book called How Full Is Your Bucket?
Here, let me just
please. Yep. And I finagled some
can
things
see
in the
that.
budget and bought this copy of this book for every one of my teachers.
By Tom Rath. Okay.
Yep, who is writes for Gallup and does quite a bit of research through them. Of course, Gallup with 30 plus years of experience, the surveys, everything else. So the concept is simple, but it's something that you can apply as you go through your life in the world. And the idea simply is every interaction we have with somebody else, we have a bucket and a dipper. And are we going to fill their bucket of the person that we're interacting with, or are we going to pull from theirs and put it into our bucket? And it's this idea that the interactions that we have with each other, right, either energize or drain us. And if we are the ones who are draining those around us, we're dipping from their bucket and putting it into ours. But if people are improved as a result of our conversations together, then we're sharing a little bit of ours. And it's, again, a very simple image, but it can really, it reverberated through the school. I've used it multiple times in different ways. And the idea is it can be so simple. Just a simple note, just a simple response. If somebody sends you a quick email, just a simple thank you, and really just understanding the influence and impact we have on those around us.
That sounds like a great book.
It's a
and it's a nice
little read.
simple, it's pretty thin.
Yeah.
And yet that is kind of a concept that would stay in your mind as you just your daily life.
It is. It's just a simple little thing, the bucket and the dipper. Well, and I mentioned this one earlier, and I'll take my notes and things out of it because I've been teaching this book for a while. And that's Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And while it can seem a bit intimidating to approach, I would argue that it really is very accessible because it taps into the monomyth, the story of humanity, and talks about how heroes on a journey, we're all the heroes of our own story, right? We are, each of us as individuals, we live our lives, and you are, at the end of the day, the hero of your life and of your story. And how, as that hero, there's a cycle, a journey, a path that we follow. And Joseph Campbell, I just find all of his work to be just so brilliant. And he talks about with that monomyth or that mono story, how all of us are in our lives until something disrupts us, which becomes that call to adventure. And often we reject the call because, and it's almost, you can almost use the story I just shared about becoming superintendent. When I first had the call from New Canaan, and literally a call, I was really hesitant and was thinking no because of where I was, and I was comfortable and I was in a good place. But then you step out of that comfort zone, or you're forced out, like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Right? George Lucas was very familiar with Joseph Campbell's work as he developed the story around Star Wars. And so you go off into a place that's the unknown, and you find a mentor to work with you, to help you. But you can't be with that mentor forever, right? So then the mentor leaves in one way or another, and you're on your own, and you're facing those challenges, and whether it's making those decisions. And of course, we're not all battling dragons and doing all those things, but it's, in a way, we are, because we're facing our fears about our own inadequacies, our inability to do what people think we can do. We're building our experience and our confidence and becoming more and more competent in whatever it is we're doing. And then as the cycle continues, we're put into a place where we have to face our greatest fear. And that's where we can either sort of thrive or not, right? And we call that sort of slaying your own dragon. What is that thing? And some of us have many dragons, right? And we're doing on this cycle all the time. But typically you're on your own at that point. You have to use what you've learned along the way. And if you emerge victorious from that experience, then you can return back to where you were. And then ultimately it looks very different. James Joyce, right? Returning to where you were and know it for the first time, where you began. But the opportunity then exists for you to serve as a mentor for somebody else. And so that cycle, as we think about it, and I'm probably telling too much about it, but I am an English teacher. I can't help it. I haven't had a chance to do this in a long time. But
we'll have you back.
I hope so.
That would be really nice.
Maybe we should have people vote. I don't know. I hope they want me. But long and short of it is that when we think about our lives and our experiences, it's just really shifted. And I think maybe in a way it brings some meaning to our lives and to our experiences, knowing that we're part of one great story. And that's what makes us human, all of us.
Next.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Just letting everyone know that I'm writing these down. I will be creating an email I'll send to everybody who has registered for the program, and you'll get the list of the books that are being discussed today. So do not worry if you're missing out on writing down titles or anything.
And I'm
I will
happy to
send it out
share
you.
them, but I will call if I don't get it back.
Okay. Okay.
Just
Let
kidding.
me hold up this one. For
Okay,
you.
so another, this is a newer one, just out, I believe, in the last year or so. Don't mind the large print edition. We ordered the wrong one out of Amazon there. But this is actually, Adam Grant is a thinker in the Wharton School. And he came out with this book around Think Again. And in it, his central argument that begins is that most of us in our lives approach things in one of three ways when we're working, talking to other people, working through. And we approach them as a preacher, where we are sort of advocating for our position, right? And you should never say three things, because then you forget the other ones. So, but it's a politician, right? Preacher, a politician, because you are looking to build support for whatever your idea is, right? And the last is a prosecutor. See, I didn't have to look. I just had to have the book in my hand. And the last is a prosecutor, where we're sort of coming at somebody for their idea. We're prosecuting them for their idea. And when we have discussions about important topics or ideas, without knowing it, we tend to fall into one of those three kind of frames of mind. And Adam Grant's position is all of those don't lead to task-related conflict, which is positive conflict. That they lead to relational conflict, which is negative conflict, right? So if we're debating an idea and then it becomes I begin prosecuting you for it, it becomes personal, and we don't get to the place we need to be. So what he says is the mindset we should be using is as a scientist, where we're asking questions, not advocacy, but inquiry, right? And that's a Peter Senge, but to ask those questions about and seek to understand and to not bring our emotion to the table. He uses the Wright brothers in there as a great example about how they were famous for their arguments, but it was always task-related arguments. And arguably some of the greatest engineers, in the last 100+ years, because of the arguments that they had based on the task and the deep trust that they had as brothers, they were able to figure out the design for the propeller, and were able to do what, create and engineer what we have. People have been trying for a very long time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Is that a timer?
No, so sorry.
Oh, good. But anyway, so that's one of many examples that he uses, but talking about, how can we approach the world as scientists? And I think today, it's probably more important than ever. It certainly feels that way, because we have this ubiquitous access to information that may or may not be credible. And so if we approach that as scientists and look to triangulate and understand, I think we'll all be in a better place. So
it's like getting back to the drawing board. Is having the argument. Let's get back to the drawing board.
That's right. And let's focus on, again, task-related conflict is wonderful. That's what we want. That's not my phone's ringing. We want our students to learn that. Yeah, no. What about disruptions? But we want our students to learn to do that. When we talk about collaborative groups and we have kids working together, we working with them so they understand that what their goal is to work together, to disagree together sometimes about the task, about the challenge, about what's in front of them, and to try and to fail and to try again and to experiment. And that iterative process is what leads us to the breakthroughs that we have. So this book, I read it, was so inspired by it that this was our read for the administrative team this year. So every one of our principals, assistant principals, the cabinet members, we got copies for everyone, and read it. And we had a long discussion about it this summer. And we continue to sort of surface different ideas in our conversations together. And then we bought some copies for the Board of Ed.
Oh, fantastic.
For them to read, right? Because again, I think that the message there is so powerful. And Adam Grant, again, he's a young guy out of a great school, and he's got podcasts and interviews and other things, and he's really an impressive person. So,
and you can let us know. We'll get a copy and have it on hold, just here at the library, if people just want to know what everyone is reading in the administration.
Oh, that's great.
We can have it here at the library. So yeah,
oh, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch with Jacqueline.
All right.
Next year.
Yeah.
What do you think?
If I wait that long, sometimes I get a mid-year book too.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Busy.
I know that I'm probably running out of time, but I have to or I'd feel that I missed something if I didn't just share this book as well.
Sure.
And this one, where Adam is brand new, Jim Collins in Good to Great is more of a seminal work in what we do. And the idea here, what Jim Collins did in the study, he's out of Colorado, he's got a team of researchers, and they looked at companies that had been good for some time that all of a sudden had a breakthrough and became great. And he looks at a couple like Procter & Gamble and a few others, and looks in a small pool and looks for the commonalities, right? What are the indicators that they all share? What happened that led for these companies to be good for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden achieve and sustain greatness over a long period? And this is something that, again, about changing mindset, understanding the world. And in my work as a superintendent, as I mentioned before, I love education. I love the work we do in schools. I think it's the most important work on the planet. And I learned so much by reading horizontally in different industries, right? So this is really, you could say, well, this is about companies, but all of the tenets apply in the work that we do in our schools, right? So, and we're always thinking about how do we reach and sustain greatness on behalf of our kids. So he talks about things like, there's a chapter about leadership, and talks about, in the beginning, he didn't want to find anything about leadership because he didn't like even the word. He felt like there were other things at play because he's a real, again, scientist going into this, but realized that there's a certain type of leadership that leads from good to great. And it goes from the what he calls level 4, which is all about the leader, to level 5, which is all about the organization. Talks about the importance of getting the right people on the bus, getting them. And then once you have them on the bus, getting them in the right seats. But don't worry in the beginning about the right seats, just get them on the bus first, and keep doing that work. He talks about momentum. And this is something that really has resonated throughout my entire career ever since I've read it. The idea around, as a school district, as an organization, we build positive momentum. It's our challenge to do that. And when we have to do it in a way that's really strategic and thoughtful and long-term, but that momentum will help us to ensure that we continually improve and keep moving down the right path. So there's so much more in here. He's since written a follow-up and a short monograph for the for the public sector and things like that. But the core work here with Good to Great is really something that, again, you can apply in your life, but as a superintendent or as a building principal or others, I really found that framework to be readily applicable to the work that we do. And I think we see the results across the district, with the wonderful people that we have. I think we have the right people on the bus and in the right seats, and the great momentum that we have as a district. So.
Fantastic. I'm looking at the time. So I want to let everyone know that we can do questions at the end, but if you want, you can put them into the chat right now. And so the chat is just something that you see right at the bottom of your screen. You can type in a chat, or if you want to do one more book, and then all the books that I was going to suggest today, I'll actually just put them on the email that I send out to you, and all the events, because this is a really great new kind of book talking here on the book chat, with really, really helpful information about, pretty much everything that's important for our children and our society today. I think these are great. So, so feel free to fill up the chat if you would like. Do you want to do one more book, and then we'll open it up to questions?
I'd love to.
Okay.
And I know we spoke, it's funny that we talked about fiction in the beginning, and I'm talking about nonfiction, right? But I hope Joseph Campbell sort of covered that quite a bit. The Harry Potter series, and Reading with Children, and all the things we've done. But I'm going to do one more nonfiction. I do have in my office a replica of Snape's wand that a student gave to me years ago. I thought about bringing it, but thought maybe that's a little too corny. So I didn't, but it is in my office. And, but the very last one that I'll talk about briefly is Leadership Without Easy Answers. And it is another nonfiction by Ronald Heifetz, who's out of Harvard. And again, it's about a framework that he developed and he created and has developed through the years that has helped me in my life and in my work and in all of what we do. And what, again, at the risk of significantly oversimplifying, he talks about the difference between technical challenges and adaptive challenges. It's okay. And this work, if you're familiar with management literature, goes back into Sengi's The Fifth Discipline and other things. But Heifetz really fleshes it out very, very well. And he talks about when we're faced with challenges, we can approach, they can be technical challenges or adaptive challenge. And a technical challenge would be something, and I'm going to be very simplistic here, but if the room was too warm, we could turn down the thermostat and it would do everything that it has to do, and it would make it cooler in here. And you and I wouldn't have to change a thing. We just could do something externally and that would do it. Technical challenges can be things, schedules, and those things that have easy, straightforward answers. Adaptive challenges, however, are the things that we are confronted with that can only really truly be resolved with a change in the paradigm of the mind and hearts of the people involved in making the change. So we make a lot of mistakes in my role and in leadership role, and even in family, sometimes other things, by approaching adaptive challenges with technical solutions. So we think that if we just make a change here or a change there on a technical side, without changing the hearts and minds of the people involved, that it'll resolve the problem. And what actually happens is it just either delays or can even amplify the problem. So sort of thinking about, and you mentioned or asked before about some of the challenges in education. I think the very first one I laid out was a very adaptive challenge, right? Because we want to, one of the big challenges for public schools here in the state and the country is to help everyone in the country recognize and understand and appreciate the importance of the work that we do. That is a shift in hearts and minds, not from all. I mean, there's many people here on the call and, in the town here and other places certainly recognize and value that. But to do that at scale in a system that's trying to do something at scale that's never been done before, I think is really important. And if we think that sending some flyers out or just creating a website or doing something technical is going to resolve that issue, then we're just adding to the problem. Right. So he's got lots of work. There's a couple of follow-up books, Leadership on the Line, Leadership Without ECS. But this is, I believe, his one of his earliest, and it's what introduced me to him. And it's another author whose stuff I read every chance I get.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to open it's 11:45. Usually we are just 45 minutes, but if people would like to ask Bryan some questions, please unmute yourself. You have to do that yourself, and please ask. And can you stay just a few more minutes?
I'm all yours.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who has a question? You just need to unmute yourself, that's all. Hello. Yes, I know, he is the principal. I mean, he's not the principal, he is the superintendent. Yes, I know, it's challenging to want to ask him a question.
See,
it won't be wrong.
I think I put everyone
I think he's put everyone at it. You won't be wrong with your question. I remember that in grade school. Like, I don't want to raise my hand.
I know, I understand.
Everyone think I was a fool. Oh, okay. So Peter, thank you, Peter. Fascinating. I got to know Bryan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, let me, I'm going to steal you since you're all just still here. Just the books that I was going to talk about. And I thank you very much. And this is going to be just quick. This is The Survivors by Alex Schulman, a fictional book. So now we're talking fiction. It's a fictional book about, if you liked Sally Rooney's book, Conversations with Friends, or her most recent Beautiful World, Where Are You? This is kind of a similar book, but instead of women sort of dominating the conversation in Sally Rooney's book, this is about three brothers whose mother has passed away, and it's their story. Schulman is Scandinavian, so it has that sort of mysterious Nordic kind of thrill to the writing. And interestingly, it starts it goes back and forth in chapters of when they're in their childhood and marching forward to their adulthood, and then the other chapter is about the funeral, and then marching outward toward later on, or toward the mother's death. And so both of them are time thing. But it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And it's just a little bit different from Sally Rooney, who is amazingly popular here. All right, the next one, I don't have a book to show you because it's checked out. Crying in H Mart. This is a memoir by Michelle Zauner. Michelle Zauner is a Korean pop star. She's a music sensation, and she lost her mother recently. And so she has written this beautiful memoir, which is part food blog, part crying grief, but then soldiering on with getting back into her Korean heritage. She is her father is American, her mother was Korean, and they lived in Oregon in a very far away farm. So she was very sequestered, and then broke out into the world and had quite a difficult relationship with her mom. But then when her mom had the cancer, it was all bringing into focus. She's on tour, trying to be the good daughter, goes back and brings back all of the Korean sort of health recipes to her mom that she learned from her aunts. And it's a beautiful and also at times very raw kind of a memoir written by a real up and coming Michelle Zauner. She's very, very popular on the music scene. So, and she's coming. Oh, I forgot to tell you. She's coming to New Canaan Library via Zoom on, let's see, what is the date? The 2nd, I believe. I will be talking with her on Zoom. So we're really happy to have her. And then the final one is Oh, William by Elizabeth Strout. A lot of you are, again, everyone here is a Strout fan. What I will tell you is this is the sequel to the Lucy Barton story. Though I've been told, I met and talked with Elizabeth Strout at a recent event. And though the books are not, you don't need to read them sequentially. They both need to be read, she said, to understand everything about Lucy Barton, because this is a continuation of Lucy Barton. She's divorced her husband. She married another gentleman. I forgot his name. He's passed away. And now all of a sudden she is back with William. And it's again, sort of a going back and forth in time about relationships and about where we are in our world and how can we feel good about ourselves now as we are, number one, without our significant other, but then also as we're aging, getting older and older, and we find ourselves with our big nemesis of our past, our divorced husband and his divorced wife. Interesting. So I'm very looking forward to reading this. And she says that this is sort of a memoir. And I was like, what? And she said, yes, this is sort of a memoir. She says it's fictionalized, but it's sort of a memoir. Like, wow. So anyway, those are the books that I have to suggest to you, fictionalized. And then another person coming to the library is Charlotte McConaughey. She is the sensation from Australia. She writes a lot of fiction, climate fiction, and she is really, she wrote Migrations last year, international bestsellers. I don't know how many zillions of languages it's now being published in. Her new book, Once There Were Wolves, she is coming to the library November 23rd, and I will be talking with her about Once There Were Wolves, and we're very excited about having her here. So that's about it. All of this will be in the email that I send to you. And does anyone have a question now for Bryan? I'm looking at my screen to see any hands up or anything. Oh, okay. Bryan, what's your favorite fiction? You talked about nonfiction.
I did.
Yeah,
I
you're
did.
on the, yeah.
Yep, that's a great question. And so the genre that I tend to go to in fiction is science fiction or fantasy, to be honest. I just never outgrew it. I started off with my reading The Lord of the Rings under my desk in 7th grade and getting in some trouble for it, from there to books like Dune or Fahrenheit 451, or into others. I mentioned Game of Thrones before. I love that. I love the expanse of the world that gets created. Of course, some great biographies, some first-person memoirs, some other things. But fiction, I think that's the genre I go to most often, if I can find something good. Otherwise, I follow people's recommendations like you, Laura.
Well, good. Any other questions? You can unmute yourself if you'd like to, or just put it right into the chat. I've been so fascinated with just how quick the books are just coming. People die, authors die, and but because they are such popular characters, the audience does not want them to go away.
That's right.
And so now you have other people writing about those characters, and those series are continuing, and I'm amazed by that. I kind of like, wow, is this, I mean, how long is all these characters going to last?
Right.
That's what I find interesting. Okay. Well, you know what, everyone? I think we've got a busy morning. I know Bryan has a busy morning. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so everyone, I thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry I keep looking at the camera and I'm looking at my screen. Everyone, have a very nice day. Thank you for coming. This was Book Chat. I will be sending out the email to everyone who has registered to be on the chat today, and go ahead and share with friends. We appreciate that. This has been recorded, so if anyone is interested in hearing what Bryan had to say, you certainly can go onto our YouTube channel. In about 1 or 2 days, we'll have that up on our YouTube channel to watch.
I'll share it with my mother.
Oh. Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
coming. Have a nice day.
Thank you.